Wednesday afternoon, too. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Some Browns news, roster, practice squad. They're also working out in Berea. But we start, Tony Grossi, longtime Browns beat reporter, asked his thoughts about the Browns' 2024 roster.
Tony, here we go. I know it's not finished yet, but where does the roster stand since 2000 in your mind? Where does it rank as far as talent goes?
Oh, I think the roster is the best it's been in the expansion era, and I've said that the last 3 years, and I'll say it again because I think this roster is better than last year's roster, and I thought last year's roster was the best, and actually the year before that even. So that's why you can't dismiss this team. I know there are a lot of questions about the offense, and believe me, in my mind too, and you know my concerns, but they still have a roster capable of winning the division, and that's why everyone should be excited. You know, you'll ask me what's my one word to describe.
Yeah, describe how you feel about the Browns in one word.
Curious. I'm waiting to see what I haven't seen before, yet I know they're planning things that we haven't seen before, specifically on offense.
Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, Tony's a guy, a lot like Mary Kay. They'll tell you exactly what they think. If he didn't think the roster was good, he'd tell you he didn't think the roster was good. He said curious. Yeah, that's a great word to describe what you think of the Browns in 2024.
Well, I think you have one consistent, and I think that consistent is defense, right? And I agree with Tony. The roster has even gotten better. I think Hicks is a really, really good linebacker inside with leadership. I think JOK, all those guys in their primes are getting better, those young guys. And you got Miles, obviously, player of the year. I think Delpit's going to get better. Thornhill's back healthy. So not only are they good on defense, but I think they're even going to be better. But the curious part comes down to offense. And really, we know we've said this for months and months and months, but it comes down to Deshaun Watson. I don't think you have any question marks. I think the offensive line, the tackles, but remember, you can help the tackles, and Kevin Stefanski does a great job of that. So I think they'll help the tackles. I think the receivers are solid. I think there's some concerns with depth at running back right now, maybe a little bit of concern with depth at tight end, but it really comes down to Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson plays at a high level. He doesn't have to play at the 2020 level. He just got to make the plays when they're presented to him, and I think he can. But I agree with Tony. I think the kicking game, everything is better each of the last 3 years, and this should be a year where everybody should be excited because they do have a lot of talent at a lot of positions.
Yeah, and the other thing, we've talked about this briefly, I don't want Deshaun Watson to throw for 5,000 yards. He did that because it was a 4-12 team, and he was coming from behind, and they were playing prevent, and they were doing all kinds of things that happens with bad teams. Teams that are usually really good don't lead the league in passing yards.
Well, yeah, and really it comes down to making the plays when they're presented. I know you and I have talked about that, and what I mean by that is that when it gets to when you have to make a play, third quarter, third and long, fourth quarter drive, whatever those big plays are, second medium, getting a first down, all those things that happen during the course of a game. And really when it comes down to playing quarterback play, it is leading the team. And when you have a full football team, you have good special teams, and you have an elite defense, that on paper is could be generational type good. So you want to make sure that you're playing complementary football, making the plays, and there will be some games like the Houston game last year where you got to carry the load because the offensive coordinator has a great plan and scores a couple points, or you give up a punt return, or whatever that is. There are times an offense has to carry it, and he'll have to do that. The elite teams win with quarterback play in the playoffs, but they also win with defense, and they also win with special teams. So again, I agree with you. I don't think they need the 2020. They need the 2024, which is be a part of the team.
All right, Ian Rappaport from NFL Network, The Insiders, talking about the Browns keeping 4 quarterbacks on their initial 53-man roster.
Right, of course, you're talking about the Cleveland Browns, and you're right, they have a starter in Deshaun Watson, should be fine for the season. They have DTR, who they really like for the future, and I would imagine view him as a potential future backup quarterback. They also have Snoop Hundley, and then, of course, they also have Jameis Winston, and I would say both of those names came up in trade conversations. Jameis obviously would be a different conversation because he's making a lot more money. Snoop Hundley would be a little more of a sort of lower signing, a team looking to add a backup quarterback. I wondered if that would make sense for the Minnesota Vikings. Did not end up happening. But for the Cleveland Browns, I would expect them to have at some point 3 quarterbacks. We just don't know for sure who it's going to be. And you're right, guys, there are plenty of time to shape the roster. Probably not going to start with 4. But even if they do, it would sort of make sense because guys do get injured. Teams do have needs for quarterback. If this is a real asset they could have, get in a potential trade, then they should probably just keep him and wait because injuries are unfortunately going to happen.
Well, and this comes from Jordan Schultz today. Browns never discussed trading or moving on from Jameis Winston. Cleveland is expected to make a QB move today, but it will not involve Winston. Jordan Schultz, again, that's pretty well-sourced national NFL guy, so I tend to believe that. I also tend to believe they're talking, and Andrew Berry's sharp enough, he's going to tell them, we love all of these guys, so we don't want to move on from DTR. We don't want to move on from Jameis. We don't want to move on from Snoop Huntley. You never sell an asset short when you potentially might be moving on from it.
Well, the quarterback situation is really interesting, right? So they played 5 last year. Now they got 4 guys who can really play, and I really believe those 4 guys can play. I'm actually on a mountain alone, I think, sometimes with Huntley. I'm a big Huntley fan, not because I think he's better than DTR. I think DTR has a bright future. But I think the Browns are in a win-now situation. I think Huntley gives them more flexibility down in the red zone, maybe some quarterback run play. I think you don't have to change whatsoever. Though DTR has been very, very impressive to me, both in the games, but more importantly at practice. So I see why they're high on DTR. I'm more talking about this year and more talking specifically about the quarterback run game in the red zone. However, it's you got to think that these guys are an asset, and they're going to need getting rid of their tailback situation is something they might have to address. I thought Foreman was a great fit. Maybe he's not. Maybe they do plan on bringing him back. I've heard some reports of that. So they have to get some depth at certain positions, but that quarterback position gives them some flexibility for sure.
Yeah, and actually, frequent viewers will know I'm with you. I prefer Huntley to DTR. I think DTR is a developmental guy, but again, I'm not sure. Preseason is very different than regular season. If I got to win a regular season game right now, I'm more comfortable with Huntley than DTR. I just am. But we'll see if somebody offers them. The other thing could be somebody looks at those two and views this guy fits better and offers you a higher, a more valuable asset. We'll leave it at that. Hey, some great news too. Denzel Ward was in concussion protocol, and Mary Kay Cabot tweets out back at practice today. He was in the protocol since August 12th. We know that's his 5th concussion, so it is really good news that he is back and progressing.
Well, that's really good news because with concussions, obviously there's a lot of baselines they have to meet. And I remember even my last year of coaching high school a couple years ago, they do a baseline and you have to meet all these things that you have no control over. It's so well done now. So that tells me, one, I don't ever want to downplay the severity of a concussion because that's not, I don't know enough about him. However, him being able to practice tells you that they feel good about where he is. The doctors feel good about where he is. And, regardless if it's a minor concussion or severe, they treat them all the same. I'm so impressed with how they do concussions in the NFL now at all levels of football, actually, protecting those guys. So I feel pretty good. I feel a little bit less fearful for him coming back after his 5th concussion.
So the Browns also signed 13 players to the practice squad today. Most of them were in it, and there's reports that a 14th has been signed. Guys that were with him in camp: Briggs, Brown, Darden, Edmonds, Hardy, special teams ace, Safeti, Kamara, Emmett Beekwe, who's a Pathways guy that doesn't count against the number because he's the NFL's referendum there. Prochet, Reed, Sunahara as the long snapper, Michael Woods, and Thompson. Also, they've reportedly signed Mike Ford, a cornerback, to the special teams ace from last year to the practice squad. So they got back a lot of the guys that they wanted to relative to the practice squad.
Well, there's two guys that really, it's the receiver thing is fascinating to me. I am super impressed with Michael Woods physically. Um, David Bell is an enigma right now for me. I really loved him coming out of Purdue. He's not a speed guy, but some guys just get open. And I just think if they can be more consistent with quarterback play, and I don't mean a level of play, just having the same guy in there and then practicing with the same guy. David Bell is a talented guy, and he just hasn't been able to get over the top yet. I actually thought it was a really, really close heat between he and Michael Woods. Crochet also because of his special teams play. So, there's some guys. I'm super excited for Michael Woods. I thought he made great progression. I thought he did a great job in zone and man this camp. I thought he had a really good camp. Physically, he looks good. They see something in David Bell that I hope I do as well. I just got to see it on the field, whether it be injury or whatever it is. I just think David Bell hasn't reached that potential yet, and hopefully he does.
So this comes from Noah Weiskopf. Browns are planning on signing 2 veteran tight ends to the practice squad, leaving David Njoku, Jordan Akins as the only 2 on the active roster. Cleveland currently has 4 spots. Actually, it's 3 if the Mike Ford name is correct. It could be 4 if Mbikwe doesn't count against them. They're expected to use a pair of them on seasoned tight ends. So, again, I get that, but the other thing is we've talked about this, they're going to play a lot of 11 personnel, so just 1 tight end on the field at a time.
Well, yeah, you know what? I think it's interesting to me. I thought Giovanni Ricci was a great fit to kind of connect Kevin Stefanski what he used to do. The thing that tells me, just like you said, it tells me more 11 personnel. It also tells me they have to get more tight ends on their scout teams because teams still run 12 and 13 personnel, and they're going to have to see that in practice. So that tells me, obviously, that if they're going to sign a couple tight ends, one is obviously injury. They need to bring a guy up. And then secondly, obviously, if you're facing a team that's in 13 personnel or 12 personnel or, multiple sets, they need some guys that some flexibility to show them the looks they might need each week, depending on what formations and personnel groups they're going to see the upcoming week.
Lance Reisland and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, dough, Skrilla, chips, bread, and mo. 2, 5, 10, and 20. 30 big ones, games aplenty. Cheddar, butter, loot, and scratch. Find the letters, make a match, cause there's many words for cash, no doubt, and many ways to play a cash word. Check 'em out. Cash word from Ohio, lottery. It's game time, yo. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions and prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, my name is Greg from Salem. I just wanted to offer a comment on this. I wish people would give Watson the opportunity to come back from the injuries that he sustained and underneath the new offense and find out what he looks like. I understand things didn't look good in the preseason, but our starters didn't play, and neither did he. And he needs to have the opportunity with more spreads and RPOs to play to his strengths. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this, and as always, be safe. Have a good day.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Lance, I agree. Again, if you don't like Deshaun Watson, that's one thing. And everybody's entitled to their opinion. I think this is the first, if what we're hearing is what they're going to do, spread it out, shotgun, kind of play matchups, I think it's the first time you've tailored an offense around Deshaun Watson since he's been here.
Well, for me, it's twofold. One is, obviously, I couldn't agree more. The offense just hasn't clicked. That's why, for me, I would have liked to see him play a little bit in the preseason. I understand why he didn't. And I've had arguments on both sides. And it's really weird because I agree with both sides. But for me as a coach, because it's new, because of all the moving parts, you kind of need those reps. Now, people say 10 to 15 reps won't help you. But if you took 5 to 10 in the first or whatever it may be, I do think that would help. And just to see that speed and see the spread and see how people are going to align to you, I just think anything would have helped. The other thing that happens is, first and foremost, quarterbacks and offense coordinators, head coach don't get a break. They don't get the you get to build towards it. They have to be good, and they have to be good right away. They know that, and they're okay with that. And with him not playing and what the Browns did to get to Deshaun Watson and some of the things that he had off the field, it has led to people having their opinions, which is okay. But I agree. I think the offense finally fits him. I think the scheme fits him. And I think he's practicing, and he's had a full camp and a full offseason. So I expect big things. I have been on the Deshaun Watson bandwagon for a while because I love the way he practices. The criticism will never stop, right? And that's the nature of football. If you call plays, if you're a head coach, if you're a quarterback, you're only as good as your last play. And that's just the bottom line. And people in the NFL, that's just how it works.
Yeah, the other thing is again, he's done a lot of things in the community. He doesn't really do it for notoriety and that, which it tells me he's doing them for the right reasons. People are skeptical. That's fine. The whole thing, like buying Glenville their state championship rings. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He went out and did it. I know Ted Ginn pretty well, and I know he appreciated the gesture. And it wasn't asked for. It wasn't advertised. Wasn't any of that.
Well, I always try to stay to the film and what I see on film, and I try not to get too much involved with what happens off the field. But I will tell you on the field, Deshaun Watson works very, very hard. He's worked very hard at this process. He's had injuries. He's had off the field things that has affected his ability to play on the field. Hasn't been able to practice with the team. He's had injuries. He's only played, 12 games in the last 3 years. So there are some rust there. People don't want to hear about that, but that's the reality of it. Some guys don't have as much rust as others. But also, most of those guys don't have the ceiling that Deshaun Watson can get to. Deshaun Watson's still a young kid. He has a ton of ability, and he has not lost all that ability. And he doesn't have to be like he was in 2020. So I think it's time to kind of move forward. I think he's got a great chance with what they're doing. And first and foremost, as a former head coach, he has a defense that he can rely on. And people don't want to hear that, but he has a defense that he can rely on, and that will get them through until he plays at the level he needs to, which will be sooner than later.
So some of the offensive line getting healthy as well. Jack Conklin talked about coming back from his injury.
It was ACL, MCL, PCL, meniscus, so it was the whole shebang. So, it's not, any knee injury is not easy, but it was a lot. But again, I knew what it took, and unfortunately, but fortunately it also, I have a great mindset towards it. I knew that I could come back from it and play at a high level again. So it was just about getting in the weight room, getting in the rehab, and just working hard. And I knew I think when you go through these rehabs, you can't look at the day to day. You got to look back at week to month and just start to realize I have come a long ways, because sometimes you can get lost if you're trying to look at day to day and you're doing the same thing over and over again, and you might not see the results right away. So you got to look at the whole picture.
So Lance, that was yesterday when he talked, and that means his knee injury was more significant than we knew. ACL, MCL, PCL, and meniscus. There's not anything else in there other than bone.
Yeah, a lot of letters there, right? So he got them all, right? Bend it in, bend it out, lateral movement. He got them all. So, and then the meniscus is kind of that cushion in there. So yeah, that was a devastating one. Everybody's worried about the tackles. I'm not worried about the tackles because you can help tackles, and regardless of who's at tackle, you're going to have to help on Lawrence and Micah Parsons. So the Browns are maybe in a week to week where they have to help the tackles all the time. That's easier than helping inside. And inside, they're all pros. All three of those guys have played at a high level. So helping the tackles until they get their feet wet. So if these guys come back, they haven't practiced much, they're going to have to help them. If it's the younger guys or some of the backups, they're going to have to help them. So Kevin Stefanski does a fantastic job. I say that again, a fantastic job of helping tackles against elite pass rushers he has forever. So I don't see Micah Parsons beating us because Kevin Stefanski will make somebody else beat them, which could happen. And that happens in football where, you make good plans and so do the other guys. So I don't have as much worries about the tackle. The thing I like about Jack Conklin, he's a tough dude. And I think he brings that mentality that the guards and center have. And I think that's good for the Browns run game.
So earlier we talked a little bit about the Browns signing some tight ends. They have signed one reportedly to the practice squad, Matt Barrows from The Athletic. Cameron Latu intends to join the Browns practice squad, was a third-round pick. Had an injury that kept him out all last year, but Cameron Latu, one of those tight ends. Again, that's just within the past few minutes we found that out. Back to the offensive line for a moment. Has the fact that you haven't had those 5 play in a preseason game, getting reps together? Does that concern you at all?
Absolutely. So that would concern me more about who's at the tackles, if you want to know the truth, just because of you got a new line coach. Dickerson's going to do a little bit different than Callahan. All those guys are so good. And obviously Callahan is a generational coach, and he's maybe the best O-line coach ever. But this Dickerson guy is a really good coach too. And I got to see him work a bunch. And I just think it's a concern no matter who the coach is, if they don't all together because of the fronts they're going to see in the blitzes and the adjustments they have to see. They just haven't had to do that yet. And all together. So that worries you just because they might they might have some miscommunication. That's more worrisome as a coach and as an offensive play caller than anything, just because you don't know necessarily what you're going to see against Dallas. No one shows anything in preseason. I've been watching a ton of film of the last couple years of Dallas just because you're trying to get a feel on what McCarthy's going to do offensively. So you just don't know a lot. But that's the big concern. Not that the tackles, those guys will be fine. Those guys are well coached and great athletes. It's the concern of not playing together, and will their communication be up to speed, and will they have the reps to get to where they need to against these elite pass rushers?
Lance Reisland and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, film breakdown, video analysis, some of the key matchups as the Browns get ready for Week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Time to take a little bit of a film breakdown, video analysis, some of the matchups in Week 1 with the Browns taking on the Cowboys. And Lance, we're going to start with Myles Garrett. That's probably where every offensive team starts when the Browns are getting ready to play him. So it's Tyler Guyton, big guy, 6'8", 322, who will be going against Smith, Garrett, whatever. What do you see when you look at Guyton in particular?
Well, he's a massive human, right? So he's 6'8", he's 322 pounds. He ran a 5'1". He's got super quick feet. He's a really, really good athlete, and he's had a really good offseason. So you're going to see him here. He's up at the right tackle. He's got great feet. Now, one of the things he struggles with, if you see this, even though it's a good pass set, is how high he is. And that's a problem. You talk about helping the tackles for the Browns. Well, the Dallas Cowboys have a big issue, too, because they're going to have to help Guyton because of his ability to bend. He's 6'8". He's a great athlete, but he's not overly physical, and he doesn't sometimes bend when he needs to. Now, the thing in college, being at 6'8", 322 pounds, he's been able to just dominate because of his size and athleticism. Now he's got a guy who's going to match his size, going to match his athleticism, and is going to be stronger than him. So they're going to have to help him. And I look for the Browns to create isolation with not only Myles Garrett, but with other people as well. And one of the things I see is Myles going down to that guard and putting Smith outside, because then it's going to be absolutely impossible to help him without having other guys come free. It'll be interesting, but this is more of a concern for Dallas than the Browns have for their tackles.
So again, you see it's a guy and a big guy now. The other thing that you mentioned, Garrett's ability to kind of run and bend, which is probably among the best in the NFL. Take us through this clip, what you see here.
So Guyton's the guy that we talked about when we were talking about tackles in the draft. And you're going to see here, Myles is going to come around the edge. And this is Becton from the Jets, who kind of is similar in size. And what you're going to see is his inability to bend over. So if you think about the play before where he had him in a good pass set, but he was high. Same thing here, good pass set by Becton, but Myles is so low to the ground, he makes it just impossible to block. Now, Myles has all the pass rush tools in the book, but this is what he does best, right? He bends, he gets to the edge, and he uses his freakishly strong body and speed to get around the corner. And he does it over and over and over. And this is what Guyton's going to struggle with, this ability to bend. This is exactly what you saw in the clip before, but now you're going against Myles Garrett, not a college kid.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see what the Cowboys end up doing. You know that their main running back is going to be Ezekiel Elliott. So if I'm the Browns, they're gonna get after the quarterback Dak Prescott without question. All right, another matchup that's kind of interesting is Kalen Carson, another rookie, going against Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. Take us through this first clip that you see.
Well, you can see Carson here down at the bottom. He's going to be, I watched the guy trying to find a good matchup. So he's against Keon Coleman, obviously with the Buffalo Bills, with Florida State last year. And he had a great game. Obviously, I'm going to put a bad clip on there for him just because of what we're talking about. But he played a really good game. He's long. He competes very well. He'll tackle. One thing he struggles with are two things that two different Browns receivers do really well. He struggles when the ball's in the air. He's always in great position. He's quick. He's long, but he struggles when the ball is in the air on a vertical, something Jerry Jeudy does very well. Another thing that he does is he has a tendency to get high in his back pedal. Now, I didn't realize this until I was about 3 games in on him. Once again, these elite athletes in college, sometimes they get caught because they can just do things and be better at the college level. Him being a rookie, he's seen, being at Wake Forest, he sees some good receivers, including Keon Coleman here from Florida State. But he's not going to see what he sees on a consistent basis with the Browns, with Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy. And I'm with the assumption that Diggs and Cooper are going to get after it and make some plays on each other. This second, third receiver against the second quarter, which I think will be Carson because of injury. This is the matchup the Browns have to win, and I think they can because of his lack of bend in his back pedal and his inability to find the ball on deep balls.
Yeah, Deron Bland, who had a bunch of interceptions a season ago, will not play. He's out 6-8 weeks with a foot injury, so that'll be interesting to see. Also, a new defensive coordinator. So they've got Zimmer, who Kevin Stefanski is familiar with because both of them overlapped at Minnesota. This next clip is Elijah Moore inside as a slot.
So you're going to see right here, this is Elijah Moore against Mitchell, and it's very similar to the look I got here is very similar to what he's going to see if he gets a matchup that he likes against Carson. You're going to see the DB is a little bit high here. When you're high, it's hard to change direction. And Elijah Moore he's one of those sudden twitchy guys here. And this is what I call the return route. There's a bunch of different words for it, but he's going to sell outside and he's going to drive back in. And this is a route that Carson could struggle with, especially if they move him in the slot. Now, if he's in the slot, it's Jordan Lewis, who is the Cowboys nickelback. Jordan Lewis is very good against these kind of guys. So Jerry Jeudy might be a better matchup inside with Jordan Lewis or Njoku because Lewis is only 5'10". But if Moore gets locked up here against Carson's going to struggle with his short area burst and his lateral quickness.
Well, and that's the one thing. You have Cooper now, you have Jeudy, you have Moore. So somewhere there's going to be a matchup that you like. The other thing that you mentioned, Jerry Jeudy on the outside. Take us through this next clip.
So again, here, if he gets matched up on the outside, and what are they going to do with Carson, and what are they going to do with Lewis? Because we also have Njoku, and the Browns also have Njoku, which is going to cause a problem if they're nickel, right? So right here, you're going to see Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is very good at tracking the ball deep. I love the way he catches the ball, uses his hands. He's very good at the ball over the opposite shoulder. Deshaun Watson throws a great ball here. Also one of those deep balls that people wanted to see all camp. He had a lot of them, and I saw a lot of them and a lot of good ones. This is what Carson struggles with. Carson will be there with Jeudy. He's a very, very good corner. The point is not that he's bad. First and foremost, he's a rookie. Secondly, like all rookies, he has a weakness. That's why he moved to the 4th round. For me, that weakness is finding the ball when it's deep and staying high in his back pedal. Two things the Browns absolutely attack if he's forced to play. Then if Jordan Lewis moves outside, Jordan Lewis is little. Like I said, he's 5'10", 190 pounds. So the Cowboys, I look for the Cowboys possibly to pick somebody up. Maybe Jackson got cut by the Patriots, etc. But they have some matchup issues outside of Diggs with the Browns and the depth of their skill players on the edge.
When you look at the Browns' skill players, isn't that kind of one of the things that they're trying to do? Spread it out, find matchups, you lighten up the box, and then if teams want to spread it out and they take the guy out of the box, you run, becomes a numbers game.
Well, yeah, now not only do they have spread, but they have flexible positions, right? So Njoku can be on the outside. Akins can be on the outside. Ford's good enough to be on the outside. When Hines gets back, he's good enough to be on the outside and actually run receiver routes. What that does is who are you going to move to the outside? And whoever you move to the outside, that could create a matchup inside, or vice versa. The Cowboys have an issue because outside of Diggs, and I expect Diggs to kind of go with Cooper. They're going to win and lose. They'll both make their plays against each other. But where it comes down to is Judy, Moore, and Njoku. They have a severe advantage, I think, on the Cowboys with both speed, length, and strength. Njoku, with all the matchup, he could be the guy who actually has the biggest day because they have to cover these guys now. Judy gives them that third guy, which makes that tight end. You're going to get Jordan Lewis or you're going to get a linebacker. Both will be a mismatch for David Njoku. So I look for the Browns to really attack in this spread set and really attack outside of Cooper because him and Diggs will kind of cross each other out.
The other thing is both Ken Dorsey's offense and the offense Deshaun Watson played in with the Texans, the tight end was a huge part of the passing game.
Well, yeah, and with that spread, if you have three good receivers, now the reason that's so big, especially that's why you need that third receiver, is because everybody talks about the alpha Amari Cooper, which I agree. I'm a huge Amari Cooper fan. There's no one more underrated than Amari Cooper. But when you have that number one guy and you have the number one cornerback like the Cowboys do, great. But now the Browns can attack you with two other receivers and a tight end. So what ends up happening, even if you go nickel, that nickel's got to cover the slot receiver, and now you've got a linebacker or a safety on David Njoku or whoever that tight end is. Now Njoku moving into that top five tight end category, especially run after catch, he is a mismatch issue for the Cowboys, and there is no question about it. And I'll be interested to see, do they put a safety on him? Do they put a linebacker on him? He's too fast for a linebacker. He's too big for a safety. We'll see what the Browns do, but they will attack inside for sure.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Playing dealer at cleveland.com. Always does a great stuff with the film breakdown and video analysis especially. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, dough, Skrilla, chips, bread and mo. 2, 5, 10, and 20. 30 big ones, games aplenty. Cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the letters, make a match, cause there's many words for cash, no doubt, and many ways to play a cash word. Check 'em out. Cash word from Ohio, lottery. It's game time, yo. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions in prizes, don't you know?
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. My question is, what is the benefit of releasing a player, then re-signing him a few days later? Is that like a roster manipulation tactic, or is it contract motivated? It seems a bit risky to me to let a player go and hope he doesn't sign with another team. Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast. Jeff, for the most part, it's the vested, they're referred to as vested veterans. They can have a deal in place when they put him on, When they release him, he doesn't have to go through waivers. I think it's 4 years in the league. So they know they're coming back. The advantage is you don't expose younger guys to waivers that could get claimed that you then lose. So it would be an asset that you lose. One of the reasons is they know Tyler Huntley is worth something. Or DTR. One of the two of them is worth something to other teams. It's an asset. Get that asset.
Well, also, and like you said, your point was good. It's where guys are still under rookie contract control. When obviously this would be a case most likely probably where we're talking about a player like Dante Foreman. Look, Dante's known since March that most likely he's going to be a Cleveland Brown here in 2024. He's probably already set up his living space for where he's going to be. And there's always the caveat. The caveat is hey, we're going to probably do you a little bit better financially now that we know you are going to be a part of this team. We just need a little, and, he used flexibility, maneuverability, you can use roster gymnastics. There's a lot of terms you could use here, but it's also buying yourself another time or two. Like there could be a guy, a second or third year still on the rookie contract that, hey, yeah, they're on the 53, but it's not in Sharpie. There might be an asterisk next to their name. And if so-and-so releases that guy, it could lead to this guy. So it's just ways of manipulating. The Browns are not going to go into week one with only 2 running backs on their roster. They're most likely not going to go into week one with only 4 quarterbacks on the roster. But it does, you have to set a 53. So you have to, but you still have 10 days. And, just give yourself a little more time to play with it. And, we know who the core of these guys are going to be as it is anyway.
So you mentioned Foreman. And we've heard rumblings that he's expected to be back. I firmly expect him to be back. Do you? And if not, who do you think Andrew Berry might be looking at as a running back?
At this point, look, anybody else who really is available. You're talking about somebody who doesn't really have any proven track record whatsoever. I know a lot of Browns fans, and certainly would have been an interesting name, would have been Sanjay Perine. But when everybody, I can't believe it. Well, if the Kansas City Chiefs come calling, who's not going to go play in Kansas City? You have a chance to put up some pretty good numbers. You're not going to be, forced into a heavy workload. That was probably a name that had some appeal, I would think, for a lot of people. The Chargers traded for, Hassan, primarily a special teams player. But you just want to give yourself the options or whatever. But yeah, it's hard to believe, that you're just going to go into this. And also it's hard to believe you're going to bring somebody in here. Yeah, they'd be ready to go week one, but not really fully entrenched and engrossed. So most likely you feel it's going to be Dante Foreman. But again, it was just giving themselves a little more flexibility to work out other couple positional groups.
So when you look at this roster, we kind of have an idea of what it is now. How strong do you think it is? How do you think it's improved from it? Last year I thought was the best roster since they returned. The expansion era, whatever you want, 99. I think this roster's better. Just your thoughts on this year's roster.
Well, I do agree, but it's not much. There's not much that's changed. And I've told you guys before, I think Hicks is an upgrade over Anthony Walker or Sione Takitaki. I like that they kept all the young corners and put the veterans who all seem to have a special teams pedigree on the practice squad. We got to see these special teams veteran corners play corner this summer, and it certainly was not a pretty sight by any means whatsoever. I think Mike Hall, unfortunately, going to the commissioner's exempt list probably hurts this roster a little bit. I think Mike would have stood out a little bit more once he was out there playing with players a little bit more on his skill set, on his level. Defense, I think, one of the biggest things, and again, we've talked about this, is I think there's going to be a year 2 jump because everybody's just going to be more comfortable with each other. The guys are going to be more, fully understanding of the system, fully understanding their role within the system, and of course, a big opportunity for all 11 guys who will ever be out there at any given time to have gotten more reps together. You figure there'll be better health from your safety position. Delpit should play more, certainly. You figure McLeod should hopefully play more. Thornhill should play more. And then as far as the defensive ends, I think Alex Wright's probably going to be a better player than he was last year. So for some of this to, for them to be a better unit, I think you're banking on some guys improving. I think the biggest one you're worried, maybe not even worried, is just that maybe the offensive line. Because, when you're talking about 3 guys coming back from season-ending injuries, season-ending surgeries, and obviously not everybody all ready to go just yet, that's the one that's going to give you some pause and hesitation. Plus, it's a new system, new coach offensive line-wise. And we really have nothing to hang our hat on. And if you can't even grade it right now, it would be incomplete because we haven't seen all the players basically take part in this yet.
Is there an area that you think injuries, a position group, an area where they can't afford many injuries? It's pretty deep. This roster is pretty deep, but is there an area where you're like, man, if a guy or 2 goes down, woof.
I would have to say, I think running back right now. I mean, because we know, but the thing is you tell us throughout the first 4 weeks with Nyheim Hines and Nick Chubb. That doesn't necessarily mean the first game in October that both these guys are going to walk in the building and they're going to take a week of practice and they're going to play. My belief is, they're probably looking to get because now you have those 3 veteran corners, all with special teams experience on your practice squad. I think you can make a decision on one of those 3 and maybe get somebody on the practice squad at a running back position. Because look, I mean, even if Devontae Foreman comes back, you don't have one on the practice squad. So you're one, and look, Strong battled the rib injury. Foreman certainly had a couple of dings this summer. You're one guy away from only having 2 running backs on the roster. So certainly, running back has a little, concern for me. Obviously we think the team's going to throw the ball more. They certainly look like the weapons are probably stronger as far as receiver and David Njoku. But right now it's really light in that room. And, how many times have we talked draft and we talked free agency all spring and all summer long, and I kept trying to get a young running back in here somehow, some way. But hopefully it doesn't come back to bite him. But it is something I do have my concerns about right now.
Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast, and now I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, a national reporter, his thoughts on the Browns 2024. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeremy Fowler, ESPN's national NFL reporter, on the Rich Eisen Show, talking about teams who could make some noise this year.
Which is the team that you're hearing about from other coaches, other members of our profession that on the outset of the season we should be, you think, talking about a little bit more?
Yeah, I kind of lean on my training camp tours. I went around between joint practices and tours. I hit 16 teams up. You mentioned the Browns. Watching them, I mean, their defense is going to be awesome. Like, I don't think there's any doubt about that. There's still questions about Deshaun Watson. We haven't seen him much. I saw him throw a little bit. He looked pretty good. I wouldn't say he looked like, wow, top 5 quarterback, but that was just one practice, and they didn't have the best offense that day. It was a joint practice with the Vikings. But the defense, particularly the cornerbacks and the backfield, like, it would shock me if they're not one of the league's very best. So I think the Browns are, roster-wise, are as well positioned as just about anybody outside of maybe 3 or 4 teams right now. They've done a really good job of building that up. So if they get just capable quarterback play, they can win 11 and 12 games.
And Jeff, we've said that. That's spot on. It's absolutely accurate.
My first thought there, Dave, was going to be, doesn't that sound familiar? Like, doesn't that sound familiar?
But a national guy saying it.
Yes, Jeremy Fowler. We're going to have to go ahead and throw some likes on some of those tweets you have out there. But the thing also, though, when you were talking about the secondary the way you did, what is the one thing you're not talking about when you're at a joint practice? Well, you're not mentioning the pass rush. Yeah. You're not mentioning Myles Garrett. So, these things, and they worked so well hand in hand last year. And, how you ended up with Martin Emerson, who was great as a rookie, but didn't have any turnovers, 4 interceptions in year 2. Greg Newsome hadn't had an interception up until last year, a big, huge pick 6 down in Baltimore. So you have these great coverage guys. You have good safeties, all with the ability to get around the football, and a pass rush that is currently led by the reigning defensive player of the year. So yes, and I did something last night with our network where we're talking a little bit about Deshaun and the way the running back room is set up, and is it going to be like lights out and tossing the pill all over the place the way it was with Joe Flacco last year? No, I think the Browns would probably prefer it to be more, a death of 1,000 paper cuts, and it's, well, if you're not covering the tight end in the flat, I'm going to hit it all day. Okay, well, you covered Cooper. Okay, well, you covered Judy. Okay, well, you covered Cedric Tillman. Well, nobody's covering Elijah Moore. Oh, you know what? Nobody's covering Jerome Ford out of the backfield. I'm just going to take what you're going to give me. And they're to the point now where even their 4th and 5th options are quality athletes. They can run after the catch. And that really should make Deshaun's life easier. And another point to this is understanding the way the tackle situation is for Deshaun. If anything is going to maybe get him to speed up, is that he doesn't necessarily know truly what these guys are capable of yet. So if that should give him even more of a, hey, I got to get this and I got to get it out. I don't care who it is. First open guy is getting the pill.
Well, and the other thing, and Mary Kay Cabot tweets this out. So when Jeremy Fowler was here for the joint practices, Denzel Ward didn't practice, nor did Greg Newsome. So Newsome's back at practice, hasn't cleared the protocol yet. And we mentioned that. So the reason I say that, part of clearing the protocol is you go through practice and you run around, and then we take another baseline. So it's part of the process. But Fowler saw him without 2 of their top 3 corners, and Martin Emerson showed out, and so did the younger guys, Miles Harden and Halasi. So it's young, it's deep. If only we could find some wide receivers that you draft and develop like you do cornerbacks, because the cornerbacks on this for this franchise are outstanding.
Well, you're led by 2 defensive backs. You know what I'm saying? Your head coach is a former defensive back. Your general manager is a defensive back. And one thing that I love that they do is they make a point of drafting a cornerback every season. And, it's a deep position. You usually carry 6. The Browns have 6. They already have 3 on the practice squad. You can look on defense. You can never have enough corners. You can never have enough pass rushers. So you continue to tap that market and tap it and tap it and tap it. It also gives you the ability to extend your own, and then if you have to, move on from a player or 2, recoup some draft capital that way. We all know the Browns are going to have some big decisions to make here come, not this offseason, the following offseason, or maybe even by this time next summer, where you're going to be talking about Greg Newsome and Martin Emerson Jr. and what is the future for both. It's going to be really difficult if Denzel is still here and still going strong to then extend both MJ Emerson and certainly extend Greg Newsome. That's why it's okay that you have a Cam Mitchell. That is why it's okay you have a Khalifa Lassie. That is okay why you have a Miles Harden. And most likely, what will they do again next spring? They will go out and they will probably draft yet another cornerback. The well should never run dry defensively on those positions, because that's where you can really get into a tough spot. You don't want to be playing, because a lot of times, one of your primary special teamers is a corner, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you want him to ever play corner. So, look, they know what they're doing. They know the model that works for them on defense. What Jim Schwartz needs, is kind of what the Browns like to chase after anyway. And, for a little over a year now, that marriage of Jim Schwartz to the way, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski run a team, build a roster, it's really, really meshed perfectly well.
All right, so this is from CBSSports.com. It's the NFL's preseason All-AFC team. Who knew they even had that? Second team offensive line, Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio from the Browns. Defensive line, first team, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams. Again, if Teller and Bitonio and Posick are healthy, you can work around that. That interior of the offensive line is even more important than the tackles.
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean, and this is, what this team was, built on. This is how this team succeeded, in 20 and in 21 and in 22. And of course, last year, you dealt with some turmoil and everybody was kind of dinged up and you were down to, tackle 5 and tackle 6 at times. But it's always kind of been the bread and butter here, for the last few years. You have Zach Zinter here, who they're grooming. Most likely he's going to be either the future right guard, the future left guard. It could be as soon as 2025. And they're really, Ethan Posick, it really turned out to just be an incredible find for them. An unfortunate situation for Nick Harris, who now found his way back here, was supposed to be his job and basically, it got hurt. And all of a sudden Posick got the opportunity and he just fit with these guys pretty much the same way JC Treader did. And that's where you hope, and you hope that's going to, at least give them the opportunity to run the ball better early in the season, which is one thing that was certainly lacking last year. There were moments where Jerome Ford, really put together some nice numbers, some nice games, some nice runs. But there were certainly some times where, he got to a line and basically it was just, 20 bodies there and, couldn't find the ability to push forward, lost yards a lot of times, as we all know. But, you hope that you're going to get a pretty big improvement here in the run game this year. And, it doesn't have to be a significant improvement, but just some improvement. Because, look, these guys have always been good as far as run blocking. It's hard to believe that all of a sudden now collectively everybody just fell off the map.
Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast, and I can step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll check in on national pundits' thoughts on the Browns over under 8.5 wins. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with
us. Cash, moolah, greenbacks, dough, Skrilla, chips, bread, and mo. 2, 5, 10, and 20. 30 big ones, games aplenty. Cheddar, butter, lewd, and scratch. Find the letters, make a match, cause there's many words for cash, no doubt, and many ways to play a cash word. Check 'em out. Cash word from Ohio. Lottery. It's game time, yo. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions and prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. This from the Bill Simmons podcast, Cousin Sal. Talking about the Browns over-under total of 8.5. Which way is he going?
Deshaun Watson was 5-1.
Okay.
And I don't know which way you want to go with this, but this team won without Nick Chubb, and they won with 4 or 5 quarterbacks. I think they started their 5th quarterback in Week 18. So pretty damn good. And I think it's because of that defense, which you're right, showed up at home and not on the road. But for the first 2 months, that was a top 10 defense of the century.
Leading podcast.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right. Miles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year last year. They re-signed Zadarius Smith at 5.5 sacks. He's practicing again. I think it's a top 3 defense. They brought in Devin Bush and Jordan Hicks.
So you're in.
I'm not only am I in, this is my division winner.
Whoa!
I know Joe House is with me only because
Joe
the
House
number.
is with you?
Yes. What else do I need? I don't need anything else.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Plus 450 is way too high. These teams all beat up on each other. They were great last year.
I think
why couldn't they do it?
The Watson thing just seems like it's never been worse.
5-1. That surprised you when I said he was 5-1 last year, but he was. And
They had
Joker's
some
a great
weird
tight
wins.
end. Their receivers, they have Cooper, Elijah Moore, Judy. This guy Thrash from Louisville has been good in the preseason, the rookie. I really like it.
So, Jeff, to kind of set the stage, Bill Simmons went under, and he responded by basically saying, boy, are you way off base.
I'll be honest. Like I don't necessarily, look for these numbers. It's not necessarily something that I base my content off of. Last night for the network, we did our AFC North preview, which means it was an episode with myself and the host of the 3 other AFC North teams. And when they said it was 8.5 was the over under for the Cleveland Browns, I think my eyes almost popped out of my head. So basically what you're telling me is after what this team did last year, for where the roster is, and you hear everybody, the roster's really constructed. Like everybody believes the roster's really good. So you're telling me 8.5, which basically means 500. That means, do you think this is a 500 team? And no way in a world do I possibly even believe that this team is, it's not 2 games, if not 3 games, if not more. I think the Cleveland Browns are going to win the AFC North. I think when people talk about them, you notice when they go to a negative, the only negative they have is Deshaun Watson in the situation. Nobody says, oh, well, I think the defense might regress. No, nobody says anything about that. Nobody talks about the fact that all 3 offensive tackles are coming off of season-ending surgery. Nobody brings that up. They all bring up the same thing. And to be honest, none of us saw him this summer. But you know what? 9 other NFL teams, we didn't see their number 1 quarterback this summer either. So how can we basically say it's not good if we didn't see it? You know what I'm saying? Hey, look, and if he had went out there and he played in the Seattle game and didn't look good, and I got to be honest, if DTR and Huntley looked good in their system against Seattle, I kind of think that Sean probably would have looked pretty good too. But we're all basing it on, you know, I always go back to, you know, the Tom, that Few Good Men, the Tom Cruise. It's not what I know. It's not what I think. It's what I can prove. Right now, we have no physical evidence. We can't prove anything. So to say that you think it's going to fail, it's a guess. I'm going to go with 8-4. And what do a lot of people, and what have you and I talked about a bunch, Dave, is as long as he goes out there and plays middle of the road, top 15, top 14, top 13 quarterback in the NFL, I don't see any reason the Cleveland Browns should not win the AFC North.
I agree with you, and I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I think he's going to have a nice year. I think he's going to have a real nice year. And you know what? I'm going to sit here and kind of laugh at some of the garbage that has been written. All right. This is from CBS Sports, 2024 roster cuts, top players seeking new teams. Caleb Farley was a first-round pick of the Titans. Potential landing spot, the Browns. Suffered 2 ACLs dating back to college. Also missed 2023 due to a back injury. Tough to find a team that may be willing to buy in on Farley considering all his prior injuries. The Browns could be interested. They do have the connection with Mike Vrabel, who was there. Farley was a guy that when he was healthy was really good. He just hadn't been able to stay healthy. So could I see him ending up on the practice squad? Yeah, he's got talent.
Well, there's a couple ways to look at this. The Browns, as almost every NFL team does, the Browns do have a relationship, certainly with Drew Rosenhaus, who represents Caleb Farley. The thing with Mike Vrabel, though, this is where it gets kind of interesting, though. You know, Caleb Farley has played 12 NFL games to this point. And now, knowing the type of guy Mike Vrabel is, and, you know, when things started to go bad in Tennessee, we kind of, you know, you can kind of get and have a feeling of the type of guy Mike Vrabel is. So for a guy who missed that much time, is that a guy that Mike Vrabel's necessarily going to run to endorse? And look, it's ACLs, bad back, you know, major injuries. But you don't know, you know, and I think for me, I think a guy that unfortunately was more hurt than was healthy probably isn't a guy that Mike Vrabel's probably going to run to endorse. But if you're talking about 5th or 6th corner on your 53-man roster, if you're talking about, hey, come on up here, let's go 2-3 weeks on the practice squad, let's just try to get you back in. Because the one thing you worry about is can he string together 3-4 a month of just going to practice every day, contributing in that capacity? Because, you know, 12 games, and you got to keep in mind the COVID draft is kind of when he came out. So it's a really tough spot for this guy. But at only 25 years old, great size, all the talent in the world, Browns love cornerbacks. It's certainly something you entertain. And look, if I got 3 corners on my practice squad right now who are only here to play special teams, which means I probably have 2 too many. I would certainly entertain it. Are there teams who might be a little more downtrodden who can take a chance on a guy that could be a potential starter for them and can maybe, you know, juice up, you know, their offer a little bit more than maybe the Cleveland Browns? Certainly. But, you know, you got to kick the tires on a former first-round pick.
All right, this is from Dog Pound Daily before I let you go. 3 ways the Browns can win the AFC North. Number 1, Deshaun Watson plays like he did before the trade, so with the Houston Texans. Number 2, Nick Chubb doesn't miss a step when returning from the injury. Number 3, defense keeps dominating games. Jeff, I'm looking at that. If all 3 of those happen, they're a Super Bowl contender, period.
Well, there's no question about it. It might be a Super Bowl favorite. But if number 3 continues, which is what it did last year, and it didn't continue, as we all know, the Browns defense didn't travel very well. So if Nick Chubb comes back and, oh no, he only runs for 4.5 yards a carry instead of 5, okay, I think we'll be all right. If Deshaun Watson, and look, I don't care about yards. I really don't care about touchdowns. Interceptions are what I care about, and completion percentage. Because if he can keep the completion percentage high and the interceptions low, I'm not going to have any issue about what the other statistical output is from Deshaun Watson. But if the defense goes out and, in my opinion, has the ability to be better than it was last season, and if that happens, yeah, again, AFC North, playoff games in Cleveland.
Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
All the best, Dave. As you can tell, we're getting a little bit excited.
Sounds good. Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast. Make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.